I don't know if you guys have seen this clicker, it's giant. But I'm going to walk around a little bit. Hello and welcome to PGC in London. My name is Jeff Hickman, and I am here to talk to you about cultural change at NaturalMotion Games. If you don't know who I am, I've been in the industry working with high-performing teams for about 20 years. I started out at Mythic Entertainment, launching with the launch team of Dark Age of Camelot. I was also responsible for Warhammer Online, Age of Reckoning. I was down in Austin, Texas with BioWare for the launch and successful transition to free-to-play of Star Wars: Old Republic. I got to the privilege of working on games like The Simpsons Tapped Out and NBA Live Mobile. I've been around for a little while. Currently, I'm with NaturalMotion Games, and I get the privilege of working on some really special products. CSR Racing, Dawn of Titans, and if you guys have been paying any attention to the news, in the last 6 months we signed with Disney and Lucas to build a couple of new Star Wars mobile games. It's pretty awesome. And like Sabrina said, it's a pretty wonderful place to work, just in the games industry overall. So what are we talking about today? Let's talk about culture. Sabrina set me up really well. I want to define culture in my own way, just to make sure that we're level set on what I'm talking about today. Here's how I look at culture. The ideas, customs, social behavior of a particular people or society. And I think the most important thing to understand about culture is it isn't innate, it's learned. Again, Sabrina set me up really well. You can shape culture, you can change culture, you can grow culture from nothing if that's what you want to do. And there's a lot of things, did I get it? There's a lot of things that people are going to tell you about culture today. They're going to define it for you just like I just did. They're going to talk about how you grow it. They're going to talk about how you shape it. There's all sorts of different cultures throughout the world. I've worked with a lot of them. You guys have all worked with a lot of them. But today I don't want to talk about growing new culture. What I want to talk about is what happens when you have a good culture and you want to make it great. Or you have a culture that's good but is going the wrong direction into not so good. I want to tell you the story of the last 2 years of my life, well, almost 2 years, about cultural change and the success of NaturalMotion Games. So when I joined NaturalMotion, I joined for probably one big reason. I fell in love. I fell in love with the games, and I fell in love with the people, truthfully. CSR Racing has the most sophisticated, high-performing team that I have ever worked with in my life. And I've worked at a lot of places. I spent 6 years at BioWare. That was a great team. But CSR, amazing. The things that Julian Widows and his team do in that game and in that team is unbelievable. As a matter of fact, Julian's going to be speaking about his culture at GDC this year. I encourage you all to go. It's an amazing talk. So when I was introduced to the CSR team, I was amazed. It is such a great team, yet at the same time, I had some questions, some confusion. As I looked at some of the other ways of measuring how the teams were doing within NaturalMotion outside of CSR Racing, I started to see some concerns, some things that were concerning. So if you look at Glassdoor, for example, 2 years ago, NaturalMotion's Glassdoor rating was not very good, and it was going down, even though we had these high-performing teams. If you looked at our team engagement surveys and what the people within the business were saying about the direction we were heading, even though we were so successful, some negative things were coming up. If you looked at our retention of employees, it was being hard. If you looked at our ability to hire new people, it was problematic. And I was like, well, what's going on? If things are going so well, then why are people saying they're not going so well? And so we sat down as a leadership team and we decided to make a change. And what I want to walk you through is the 6 steps that we took to change from good to great, to stop some of the confusing decline and change to the greatness that I believe we are coming towards today. This stuff it's not hard. It's not complex. It is hard. It's really hard. But if with a couple of ground rules, I think anybody can do the things that we've done. So first of all, just recognize it's going to be really hard to do. Second of all, don't make it any harder on yourself than you absolutely have to. It's going to be hard enough to make the changes that you need to make. So let me use the examples as best as I can of what we've gone through in the last 1.5 to 2 years at NaturalMotion. The first thing that we did at NaturalMotion when we decided, I think something's wrong. We need to improve somehow. We sat down and we talked about our vision for the future. Simon Sinek said that greatness starts with your vision for what you want to be. And that's what we did. We went out to our studio, to literally every single person in our studio. We talked to them one-on-one, through surveys. We took them out to lunch. We had beer at the pub. We did anything that we could do to gather information from our teams. And then we sat down in a room as a senior leadership team, and we talked about what we wanted our vision to be. And I'm not talking about a wordsmith, 4-word vision, business vision. You'll find, if you already haven't, that video game teams kind of look at that a little cynically. We just wrote plain English, authentic words on the board, 8 sentences. We talked about how we wanted to behave in the business, how we wanted people to see us as leaders, authentic, communicative, transparent. We talked about what we wanted people to think about our games. We talked about all these things, and we said, look, it's those 8 sentences that we want to be 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 6 years from now. And then we identified what was currently working. It's pretty straightforward. What are the things that we're already doing that match the vision for who we want to be? Keep those things. I'll give you an example. NaturalMotion has always been known for wow, spectacular, AAA console on mobile type graphics. It's a strength of ours. When people pick up our games, they go, I expect that. And it will always be a strength of ours, a foundation for us to build on. And so that was one of those things that we literally wrote on a sticky note and put up next to that sentence on the board. And then we did that for as many other things as we could think of. And we said, okay, foundationally, those are the good things that we want to keep. But what about the obstacles? What about the not-so-good things? What are the things that are driving the sentiment in Glassdoor or in our internal ratings or causing people to leave the studio? What are those obstacles? And so we sat, it was probably 4 hours, with about 10 of us, and we just all wrote our thoughts on sticky notes, and we stuck them on a wall, and there had to be 250. It was mind-boggling and terrifying all at once. It's like, wow, how do you drink an ocean? One sip at a time, very carefully. And that's what you need to think about as you pull your obstacles up onto the board, in whatever way you're going to do it. How do you put them together in a way that you can actually overcome? So we sat down and we took those obstacles, we took our vision, we took the things that were working for us, and we put them together in a plan. We literally grouped, we drew on a whiteboard categories for all of these obstacles. It was things like communication, collaboration, environment, benefits, players. How do we treat our players? How do we partner with our players? What are the things that we do to appreciate them and truly make them partners? We grouped them all together, and then we sat and we went, okay, now how do we actually attack each one of the obstacles that's sitting on the board? How do we put a plan together that we can use to overcome each one of these? And some of them were quite small, like easily approachable. Others were gigantic, and to this day we're still working on them and taking sips out of the ocean on some of them. What we did is we assigned a responsible owner to each one of the categories. It's critically important. I know that there's this desire to be inclusive. Assigning a responsible owner does not mean that you don't communicate. It doesn't mean you're not inclusive. It doesn't mean you don't get ideas from other people. All it means is there's a person you can go to and say, hey, you're responsible for this. You need to figure out how to move the things forward, the plan forward. In some cases, you need to put the plan together. And so we basically sat in the room, literally, and said, okay, who wants to take environment? And one of the senior leaders said, I'll take it. And we said, okay, who wants to take benefits? I'll take it. And we assigned each one of those to one of those people. They then went out and they figured out how we were going to move those things forward. In some cases, they put together small councils. In some cases, they engaged the entire studio. In some cases, they just figured out the way forward. In every case, we took small sips. And then we checked in regularly. This is key. Hold yourselves accountable and let others hold you accountable for the work that you're trying to do. So in NaturalMotion, we called these things studio initiatives. And every 3 to 4 weeks, we would get together as a senior leadership team. And every person who was an owner would stand up and go, okay, let's talk about environment today. For the last 3 weeks, here's what I've been working on. And here's what I'm going to work on in the next 3 weeks. And sometimes there wasn't a lot of movement. And this is one of the things that makes it hard. You all have another job to do. It's making games and running your businesses and marketing and QA and everything that we do. But you still have to do this if you want to be great. And then we would check in with the studio. Literally stand up in front of the studio every 6 weeks and go, okay, it's a studio initiatives update, guys. And the studio would go, okay, and they'd settle in. And then each one of us would get up and go, okay, here's the things that we said we were going to work on over the last 6 weeks. Here's what we did work on. Great, not so great. No matter what, we held ourselves accountable. And then we talked about what we were going to work on for the next 6 weeks. Okay, here's the thing we're going to do next. And here's how we want to include you guys. And here's how we're going to put another council together. Or here's how we're going to use Tiny Pulse to get information about whether you think we're moving it forward. And we rinsed and repeated and refined what we were doing constantly. Does it work? Is the action that we're taking actually moving us forward? Really look it in the eye. Don't be afraid of it. It's the only way that you're going to get the change that you want in the cultures that you have. I am really proud of my team at NaturalMotion. They've done a thing that was really hard to do. Last December, we basically declared victory on, let's call it phase 1 of our Studio Initiatives program. Phase 1. If you look at the results that we have, you can measure them in a lot of different ways. If you look at Glassdoor, for example, our London reviews on Glassdoor, I don't know what they are today, by the way, but I'm assuming they're still around 4.0 for London. I think they're like 5.0 for Brighton. If you look at the award that we won last year for one of the greatest places to work in the UK from GameIndustry.biz, we never would have won that 2 years ago. If you look at how we're engaged with our community, if you look at our team health surveys and the fact that they've raised almost 20 points positively, if you look at our ability to hire and keep our people, everything points to success, or at least the beginnings of success in changing our culture. But it's not done. So now we've moved into phase 2. And phase 2, we did exactly the same thing. It doesn't have to be any more complex than the 6 things I laid out. We sat down as a leadership team. We decided, hey, how far have we moved towards our vision? Are we there yet? No. Okay, what are the obstacles that are in our way? What are the good things that we're doing? What's our plan moving forward? Let's categorize them. And so for us this year, it's things like continue our efforts in player. We've got this beautiful player charter now. How we partner with our players, how we value them, what our commitments are to our players. Now, how do we continue to instill that into our game teams? How do we really own it? It's things like collaboration within our game teams and across NaturalMotion and Zynga. And probably most importantly for us is diversity and inclusion. If you look at D&I, it's a thing that I think the industry, I think we all know this, industry struggles with a little bit. And it's so important. Bringing in diverse thoughts to your teams, representing diverse thinking for the team, but also for the players, so that your games can be the best that they can be, is critically important. As a matter of fact, Fong Phillips, our Chief Legal Officer from Zynga and NaturalMotion, is here today. She is leading the D&I efforts within Zynga and beyond, actually. So if you guys have any questions, Fong, raise your hand again. Fong is here to talk about this, not just in this room, but with anybody who wants to talk. So please seek her out. It's an important part of our future, and it can be an important part of yours also. If we can do it, you can do it. let's wrap up. So, my ideas for culture. Ideas, customs, and social behavior of particular people or society. It's pretty stale. Like, okay. It's how you guys behave with each other. It's the expectations of how you each behave. It's in your power to define. It's hard. It's hard to do. You can't, to Sabrina's point earlier, you can't just say it. You have to do it. You have to show it as leaders. You have to show it in the team. You have to lay out what you want to be. Be clear about what you want your destination to be. Talk openly about what that is. And your people will follow you. They will. 6 steps that we used. This is just change management. I used plain language. There's lots of ways that you can talk about this. There's 4 steps, there's 6 steps. This is how we did it. It works really well for us. I hope it can work well for you also. That's all I have. Questions?
So you talked about how culture is something we have to teach each other. So what do you do when you get new employees, right? Now you have this great culture, everyone understands it. It's almost not something we have to talk about anymore. So how do you onboard new people into it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Here's the things that we do. It's really hard, by the way. It is. All of this stuff is really hard. What we do, number one, I think your teams teach each other. If there's a good culture and a person comes into that culture, they learn from the people around them. We've also, as a matter of fact, just begun, as part of our phase 2, we've begun a new onboarding process where I literally get in front of new employees every quarter, and I give them the overview. I talk about this stuff, who we want to be. I talk about our strategies, our objectives, our tactics, our mission. I walk them through who we are as NaturalMotion and Zynga. And then we talk about the values that we have, and we try to express it as openly as we possibly can. And then those people are a part of our, we have them every 2 weeks, our studio updates where we're talking about studio initiatives. We clearly point out that's the vision of who we want to be and what our future looks like. And we try to just bring them slowly into this is our culture and this is our behaviors. Does that make sense? It's probably not perfect, and we'll continue to improve on it, but I think it's those things. Other questions?
In the case of a strategic shift where, for example, we go from core games to casual, so do you have any advice on how to retain people and keep them motivated?
Yeah. I think I'm assuming we've all been through that. I've been through it 50 times. I think the key, period, is authenticity and transparency as a leadership team. The place where I see people get in trouble is when they try to cover the difficulty of change like that in nice words and nice talk with their teams. It comes across as false. And even before that, it's super important to build an authentic voice with your teams. They need to be able to trust you. And then you lean on that trust as you go into change like that, and you walk them through it. And always recognize that everybody's going through a change curve. You as the leadership team are probably way down the change curve by the time the team knows about stuff like that. And so recognize they're going to have to go through the change curve also. And you are there to shepherd them as an authentic, transparent leader. Don't keep things close to vest. Tell them things. They can take it.